Hey guys, it's July 30th, 2017, and this is your episode 107 of Percussion. My name's Casey Cangelosi, and with me are my good friends and co-hosts Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Megan Arns. How's it going?
Hello, good. How are you?
Good. How was traveling?
Traveling was good. I was traveling from Michigan back home to Columbia for the big Composers Festival that we have here every year. So it's playing some Georg Friedrich Haas crazy music. It was really fun.
Very cool, very cool. And Ben Charles, how's it going?
I'm doing well. I've been busy practicing, but I think you've been busy doing something other than practicing.
Thank you so much for asking. Well, it's actually been a good process. So you guys, I recorded Ligeti's symphonic poem for 100 Metronomes, and I literally just posted the video. So it's gonna have been up for a few weeks by the time this podcast goes out. But I literally recorded so it's one metronome I use, but I recorded that metronome unwinding at different tempos 100 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
how long did that take
it was quite an endeavor, and I don't know, somewhere around the number 40 or so, I thought, oh yeah, there's no way I can finish this, and there's no way I can do it.
I feel like that's how a lot of recording projects go. It's like, oh, I have this great idea, and then you get 10% into it, and you're like, this is so much more work than I ever thought it would be.
It seems like there's always a hump, and once you get over that hump, and then it starts to have a flow, and then you get tired again, but it's a different kind of hump because you see this finish line. All of a sudden it seems possible, it just seems hard. So the instructions are, you get 100 metronomes, and you're supposed to use 10 performers and a conductor and stuff like that, but you wind them all up as far as they'll go, set them to different tempos, and then let them go. And they gradually unwind, and they, go away little by little. And the slower the tempo, the longer it will take to unwind. So I started at the slowest tempo mark my metronome had, which was 40, and wound that one up. And that time, I actually documented the times of every single one of them to help myself stay organized.
Wow.
So the one at 40 beats per minute took 15 minutes and 40 seconds.
Uh-huh.
And the fastest one, I want to say, I don't think I ever got under 5 minutes. So basically they range from 6 to almost 16 minutes. And that includes a 2-minute silence before you start, which is something he says in the instructions. He says there should be a 2 to 6 minute silence before the metronome start. So basically I had a camera set up in my office pointed at a metronome, and it really helped to use a shotgun microphone so that it didn't pick up surrounding noise outside of the camera, so I could at least sit at my computer and wear earbuds and check email or something at least.
That's nice.
But yeah, it took freaking forever.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It sped up a lot, though, because I'd get the daily update, and at first I recorded 6 of them, and then I recorded 10, and then he was like, I got 17 today.
So that is because you start at tempo 40, that track's 15 minutes long. You go all the way up to, metronome, 7, its tempo was 54. That duration is 9 minutes and 50 seconds. So as you get faster, the duration gets a lot shorter. So of course, and the time I got 6 done, a few days later I was able to get 10 done or something. Yeah.
Casey, this is Poème Symphonique, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Alarm Will Sound did that in St. Louis a few years ago. Oh, actually, it says 2016. Maybe it was just last year. And I remember, and I just pulled it up here on my computer, they were trying to gather the 100 metronomes, because that would be a lot of money to buy all of them for this piece. And, a lot of people have, I lent them one that, is sitting on my mom's piano, right? Because they all have to be, obviously the wind-up metronomes, as you were saying. But it was cool. Mm-hmm. There's an article here in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that's, the title says, "Help make music in St. Louis. Lend your metronome."
Oh, man.
In the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Isn't that crazy?
Dude, that's awesome that you bring that up, because the thing that always stops people from doing this piece is exactly that.
Exactly.
They just can't. They can't gather the metronomes, and I think it even says that in a Ligeti article I bumped into somewhere. It says, this piece was him brushing with the Fluxus movement and Dada, and that's kind of his exploration of that, or one of his explorations of that. And the piece is considered really cool, but it just doesn't get done a whole lot. But that's an awesome idea. Just crowdsource the metronomes, because everyone's got one of those pendulum metronomes somewhere.
Exactly. And so they had like their staff running out to people's houses to get these things. And yeah, it's crazy. I love, actually, there's a sentence I want to read here from this article. Once a ubiquitous part of music practice, a small but terrifying implement placed atop pianos the world over, the old-fashioned wind-up metronome has been largely replaced by various smartphone apps, et cetera, et cetera. But I like that. Small but terrifying implement.
Yeah.
No, metronomes are your friends.
I'll have to tell you guys about my Bilotti trinome sometimes. It's a really cool metronome.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mechanical polyrhythmic metronome.
Really?
But yeah, it's really neat. But some other day, I need to introduce our friend. So you guys, our guest today is a graduate of UNT and FSU. So we've got a nice, solid, hey, it's a small world type of connection with both Megan and Ben. He's performed with Symphonia Gulf Coast in Destin and the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra. And big congrats to him, because he has recently just won a job with the Pershing's own U.S. Army Band. So, man, congrats and welcome, Peter Soroka. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start out because, for one thing, just now I learned that you played with the Gulf Coast Orchestra in Florida, which, if it's the same one that I did, was probably a hilarious experience.
I also played with that orchestra.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like the amateur orchestra where they hire a few ringers? Is that the one?
Symphonia Gulf Coast in Destin.
No, I did something different. Maybe you guys did the same one.
Yeah, it's the one out in Destin. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, never mind. Mine was, I think, a different one, and also called the Gulf Coast. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start out talking to Peter, because another small world fact is that Peter and I are both from the same place. We're both from Richmond, Virginia. I think probably 20, 30 minutes from each other. Peter's, I think, 4 years younger than me, so we never knew each other in high school, but we met later and obviously connected over that. But one thing that strikes me about Peter being a successful percussionist is that Richmond, Virginia, especially when we were in high school, was not the most happening place for percussion.
Yeah, it's very true.
At all. And I think it's probably more happening with Justin Alexander at VCU now, but overall,
definitely
not a very great scene. So could you tell us a little bit about your early beginnings and how you kind of got serious about percussion? And I think you probably did Grywe, which you could probably tell us about.
Yeah. So I mean, in my high school, I'm from Mechanicsville, so that we had kind of a smaller program, not a whole lot of gear, but things worked for us. But I had this one teacher, Isaac Edgerton, who was really influential for me. So he got me to practice a lot, which is always important. And then once Chris Keaton was at VCU, I started taking lessons with him. I got in touch with him, and he kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the different things that I didn't really know about in percussion, and then got involved with Grywe, which is the youth group that Terry Austin runs there. And that was another way to perform in a lot of concert settings that were better than what I was accustomed to in my high school. So that kind of opened up my eyes, and I stayed there with Keaton. I went to VCU for my undergrad, and he left halfway through. But funny thing is, now I'm going up to DC. I'm going to be back with Chris Keaton, which is awesome.
Yeah. Same band, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And Sidoni Wade, do you know?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys
and
weren't
another
together,
guy. We weren't, but actually right before the audition, she came here with the little brass quintet and got to meet her, talk about, how everything was going to go for the audition, which definitely helped.
Yeah.
But then another
DJ
friend of mine.
Pallmeyer also?
Yeah, DJ's there. Big FSU thing happening there now. But one of my friends, another guy from North Texas, Jay Carpster, won the job last year. So there's a lot of people that I know up there in the band, which it's going to be great.
How many percussionists are in the band?
Well, the way it works up there, there's a lot of percussionists overall, but they're split in different duties. Like there's the concert band, the ceremonial band, there's the blues band, Army Blues, and Steve Fiddick was there for a long time, and that job is actually opening up. But
a lot of the duties are split. People will play in the ceremonial band for certain performances. If they need extra people in the concert band, people from the ceremonial band will come over. Mm-hmm. But the band that I'm actually in is actually the ceremonial band. And so Sid's in that group, and DJ and a bunch of other people.
Cool.
So, but a lot of the duties are split up.
Hey, Peter, what did you know about JMU growing up? I'm just curious. I had no idea you were from Richmond, and Ben has talked about JMU. Did you know anything about JMU or percussion at JMU?
Yeah, I knew about JMU. I didn't know too much about the program, or I guess Bill Rice was there. He was your predecessor. So I didn't really know too much about him. So people kind of were telling me that, VCU was a good school and it was close for me. Actually, I had applied to Florida State when I was applying to schools and got in, but just couldn't afford the out-of-state tuition. Yeah. So I stayed, local, went to VCU, but I knew about JMU, but not really too much about the program specifically.
Do you want to just take a minute and tell everyone how awesome it is, or?
Oh yeah, it's the best program ever. No.
Oh, okay. Just checking. Ben, I think, he just mentioned FSU, and I think you were going to ask he and Megan a question. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, sure. Well, since you mentioned FSU, before you got here, I was remarking that Megan also went to FSU. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't know that we've ever had actually another FSU person on the podcast other than Megan. But regardless, I was wondering if you could tell us about what is it about John Parks that makes his students generally so successful? And Megan, too.
I think he's very committed, especially for this audition process for me. He's been really helpful, especially the couple weeks before the audition. I mean, he's great in our weekly lessons anyway. But we started having all these extra things. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to come in, this time every day this week for the next 2 weeks. And you're just going to run all of your program down, and we're going to give you some feedback. So I think he's just really dedicated and helps you prepare probably better than most people, or, just get you right to where you need to be to get the job, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my answer would be similar. He's so good at helping you prepare for whatever you want to do, or whatever audition or interview you're taking. And the curriculum is designed that way to kind of set you up so that when the actual audition does come, that you're in a place where you can make it happen in time. And then as you get closer, just like really helping you ramp up your preparation and giving a lot of feedback. And like Pete said, just like he's a very dedicated teacher to his students. He really, really, you can feel that he cares deeply about the success of his students, and that it's always about the students, not about him. I always felt that way.
It's funny you guys mention how well he prepares people for interviews and things, because actually we recorded his episode maybe a couple months before I had my interview here. And everything he said, I was taking notes on it. Everything he said, I did. And it seriously helped. The guy knows what he's talking about getting jobs. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, it's really nice that he has an approach of, hey, this is something you can have an approach to. This isn't, because I know my earliest job interviews, I just didn't think of it like that. It was kind of, well, okay, try to speak to the questions as best you can and
see what sticks.
Exactly. Just kind of do your best. And no, I mean, you can really, really have good, good strategy about it, and really be very, very methodical about it. So,
I will say, to interject, I think that, I'm not trying to knock on my teachers for not doing that. When I went to my teachers for advice, I went to Svet for advice, and he said pretty much the same things that John had said, but I feel like John does such a good job of priming his students early for it instead of waiting until it's time to do the interview.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, and I know that the times I've had people, I guess Laurel did it for me for the job here at JMU. Laurel, we did a lot of practice questions. We'd just be cooking, and Laurel would just throw them out just so I could practice. And it helps so much to practice. And I know the people I've done that for had a mock interview over the phone. Mm-hmm. I've only done it for 2 people, but they both got the job they were going for.
I was one of them.
Being one.
That's awesome.
And not that anything to do with me. I think it just means it speaks to practice. Like Alan Park says. I mean, this is obvious strategy, you know.
And actually, one of the things that Casey said in our phone interview is he asked me, "Are you married?" Which is a totally illegal question that they can't ask on interviews. And Casey knew that. And after he said, "I just asked you that just to kind of try and throw you for a loop."
Yeah.
And like I did fine with it or whatever. The funny thing is, when I came here and my interview, at the end of the interview, it wasn't an actual question, but it was sort of an off the cuff question. One of the people on the committee asked, "So are you married?" And I was like, thank God, like I ran through that scenario because like, and you don't like when someone asks you that, you don't want to cause a big, fuss about, well, legally you can't, So I was glad I was prepared for it. But yeah, it's like getting prepared for interviews early is so critical and so valuable.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Definitely.
Yeah. How did you respond?
I mean, it's one of those things that I'm sure some scheming person could be trying to figure out some diabolical plot about you. Like I said, it wasn't an actual interview question. It was sort of off the cuff as we were packing up from the lunch interview. And so I just said, no, I'm single. And he said, "Oh, well, that's good. Then it'd be easy for you to move here." Like, that's all he was asking. And I of course I could have probably made a lawsuit out of that one question, but I also probably wouldn't have gotten the job if I made a lawsuit out of it. So,
that's true.
yeah, I'd rather just kind of play along. And I'm sure there are much more inappropriate questions that have been asked illegally that maybe would be worth causing a stink over, but just be prepared for the interview. Really, that worked wonders.
Well, speaking of Peter's new job, I think we should go to a little question from our friend and another FSU graduate, Ben Fraley. Let's see, where did this go? Peter, could you please tell us about your experience going through the MEPS process? And could you also tell us what MEPS stands for?
Yeah, absolutely. So MEPS is MEPS. It's the military entrance processing stations that you have to go through. Basically, for auditions like the one I took, before the audition to make sure that you can actually be qualified for the military, and then all the steps through it until you go off to basic training. So it's like your liaison and entrance into the military. For that, they do all kinds of things. You take the ASVAB test, the aptitude. You do all kinds of forms where you say if you have allergies or whatever types of things that might disqualify you. Do height and weight, things like that. Everyone that has been in the military has dealt with this. It's not an enjoyable process usually because it just takes all day. So you get up usually by 4:30, have breakfast, get over to the facility by 6.
4:30
and then you don't leave until
a.m.
Right? Yeah, a.m. Yeah.
4:30 p.m. Have breakfast.
Yep.
Just kidding.
And then you have lunch around noon, and then you're out somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock. And in the meantime, I mean, the stuff that you actually do there could probably be done within maybe 2 hours. So then the rest of the time you're just sitting around waiting for your name to be called, whatever else. For me, I had an interesting experience. I wear contacts. I'm a little bit blind, but, still functional with glasses and all of that stuff. I didn't know that there was a cutoff for vision. What they do is if you go past this, you have to come back. So I'm in another day at MEPS. I have to go to a facility they ship me off to. It's basically just an optometrist that's employed by the Army. And they have to do a more thorough screening than what they do with their machines there. And so I waited around, got through that whole day, came back. The doctor's like, "Oh, yeah, your eyes are fine. There should be no issues." And then I get there, wait around for more hours. And by 3 o'clock, they call me back to a room and they're like, "By the way, you're being disqualified for the military, so you can't do anything and sign this paperwork." And I'm like, "What?" And then once I got through that initial shock, I went back to the liaison office for the Army, and he's like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. You just need a waiver." So they took care of that. I had to send some paperwork off, and all of this was maybe a week before my audition. So they're like, "Yeah, this stuff doesn't clear on the waiver, then you may not be able to take this audition."
Oh my God.
So I was kind of panicking, and even the Friday before I left, the audition was on Monday.
Probably took some of the stress off the audition.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I was just thankful to be there because I was like, I don't even know about this whole vision thing. What's going to happen? And I still didn't find out, and it had cleared like the day of my audition. And fortunately, at the audition, nobody was like, "Oh yeah, let's check your vision, make sure it's okay." They didn't care about that at all. It was just a normal kind of audition process. So everything ended up working out, but it was just very stressful having to deal with that. And for me, my facility is like 2.5 hours away in Jacksonville, and that's the closest one to Tallahassee. Gosh. It's like constant driving out there. It's just a headache.
That's a pain.
So fortunately, I only have to do it one more time to ship off September 12th. So that's my last MEPS experience.
Yeah, I know this stuff is no joke. I had a friend that won a trombone position, I think, in the Air Force Band. And he had some heart condition, I think, when he was like 6 years old or something. I mean, super young. And he was a totally like normal adult, had no issues, had done sports and stuff. And it came up, I guess, on the second one or something like that. And he was actually disqualified and couldn't take the job that he had actually already won the audition for.
Yeah, wow. It's terrible how that stuff goes. So you really have to like get past all of those hurdles first just to even take the job.
Was the first round a tape audition?
Yeah, I think it was December. They did a tape round. It was just like a basic marimba solo, 4 mallets, 2 mallets, snare drum, concert, rudimental, some drum set, just playing some. It was pretty basic. And then February, they notified everyone that got past it and sent out a packet, which is everything: timpani, a bunch of excerpts, 3 drum set tunes. It was a pretty lengthy list, and if I ran the whole thing straight through, it took me like a solid hour to get through all of the music. So it was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so then you had basically 2 months, and the audition was April 10th. So we had 2 months to prepare that. It was an experience for sure. It was my first like real audition that I took. So it was definitely interesting. I learned a lot of things through that process.
I bet.
What were you doing during those 2 months? Did you have a teaching gig somewhere? Were you performing? Was it, what else did you have to do on top of that?
Well, I'm still actually at Florida State. I have 1 more year left of basically just treatise stuff to do. So I was still enrolled, doing all my normal band classes and, trying to prepare a recital. Decided to postpone that to prepare this audition once I found out. So then I, adjusted, tried to practice about 8 hours a day as best I could, and I teach lessons outside of that, but mostly just regular school stuff.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks for that. And Laurel, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, today I want to talk about PAS committees because every year in the middle of July is when they announce the new members of each PAS committee. And when Casey and I were hosting a prospective grad student just a few weeks ago, I realized, some people have no idea how you get on them and what you have to do once you are on them. So I thought maybe just a really quick topic here on the podcast would be good. So it's just a little crash course in what these committees are. PAS has 18 standing committees that address specific areas of percussion performance, research, education, pedagogy, and the percussion community at large. From university pedagogy to scholarly research, to composition, to health and wellness, which is what I'm on, you can find something that interests you. And if selected to be on one of these committees, you usually serve about a 6-year term. So I was appointed to health and wellness in 2016, so I'll rotate off in 2022. There is a website that has details about each committee. It tells you who's on each one and what year they rotate off. So potentially when empty seats are going to show up on any committees you might be interested in, as well as the application process. You can just Google PAS committees, which might be faster than typing in the website. But the website is pas.org/community/get-involved/committees. And that's where you'll find all that information. And once you're there, you'll see the 18 committees are listed, and there's orange hyperlinks, and you can click on the hyperlink of the one that you're interested in and read its particular mission statement as well as its protocol for getting on it, what their interview process is, that type of thing. So, like I said, I'm on health and wellness, and to get on there, you either just send in a letter of intent to apply, which is a standard part of each committee's process, as well as a CV. In some cases, maybe a letter of recommendation. That just depends, I think, on how well the committee knows you. They might ask for something like that. I didn't have to do it, but we know someone who just did and was just appointed to the university committee. So that might be coming your way, but that's not super standard.
You're referring to Old Man Pickering?
Old Man Pickering, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, if you get past the first round, the quote-unquote first round, you'll have some type of phone interview in the month of June. And that should just be with the chair and maybe one other person if they can get together. Mine was just with the chair of the Health and Wellness Committee, but I think Caleb's was with maybe 2 or 3 people. Is that right?
Yeah, he said he had a sort of group conference call, maybe like a Skype setting sort of thing.
Yeah, about something like that.
Yeah.
So, you can be ready for either of those things. And then you'll find out in July, mid-July, if you're going to be appointed to the committee. Here's an example of one of those mission statements. So this is health and wellness. The Health and Wellness Committee addresses topics and issues relating to the health and wellness of percussionists. This includes the promotion, development, and organization of materials for publication, injury prevention workshops, and panels held at PASIC, as well as the coordination of hearing tests for attendees of the convention. So last year, 2016, I was the person that helped coordinate the hearing tests that always happen at PASIC. Ironically, I did not get my hearing tested, so I'm not a very good example. But we did have more. We had more ears tested last year than any other year.
Yay!
So, awesome. Yay! So that's good. And I've presented as part of the Health and Wellness Committee. Before I was on it, they picked one of my presentations. When the statement talks about promotion development of materials for publication. So we know that we have, Percussion News, or Percussive Notes.
Percussive Notes.
And Rhythm Scene. Those are kind of the 2 publications of PAS. And occasionally the editors will send something to the chair of one of the committees and say, hey, we need an article from you guys. What do you have? And then the chair will send an email saying, anybody have something that you're working on? Submit it, and they'll put it in the magazine. So that's an example of those kinds of things. We have a Facebook page that we try to keep somewhat active, and
it's pretty active.
I think among the PAS committee pages, it probably has a lot of activity. I won't say the most.
Your fearless leader is Brad Meyer.
Brad Meyer.
He does a good job. He posts fun things, I think, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that are health related.
Yeah. So it's a pretty simple process to get on one of the committees, in terms of just send the letter, send your CV, prep for some type of phone interview, and then hopefully it'll work out. But I think it's also smart to kind of be on the radar for one of them, assuming you're actually really interested in whatever the topic is. I know there are some folks that apply to various committees because they're tenure track and serving on a committee in a professional organization like this.
Like Ben and Megan, people like that.
Yeah, Slackers, Ben and Megan.
They better get on some.
Probably get on a committee.
So I know it, but it can be really good. Like everybody knows that serving on a professional committee is useful for your tenure profile. But I've always thought, well, I'm not available. I can't try to get a tenure profile because I'm not eligible for it. So really everything I do is just because I care about it, which I think helps in the sense that you don't mind answering emails. And when they ask for an article, you're like, sure, what do I have? And you look for it. And I've really enjoyed it so far. This will be my second PASIC as a member of the committee. And I just have to attend the meeting that they have. And I think I'm helping with hearing tests again. So everybody come visit. And yeah, it's really not too much time, I don't think. And I think, Megan, have you served on one as well?
I haven't. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just doing all the rhythm scene stuff. Oh, you know what? I did when I was a student on the university committee.
I thought you were on.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. The student university committee or something. Yeah, and it was a good experience. And something to add to that, Laurel, of you said it helps to be on the radar before. I've always heard that you should attend a meeting like the year before you apply or something, and like meet the chair. That's helpful in your application.
Well, and also I would add, attending a meeting. I've attended some of those open to the public meetings, and it made me realize, oh, this committee doesn't do what I thought it did. Yeah, so I thought, oh, I'm really interested in this topic, and I bet at the meeting, ABC is going to happen, but instead X, Y, and Z happened. So I ended up thinking,
could you give an example?
This isn't going to be the kind of work I want to do. Sorry, Ben?
I said, could you give an example? I mean, I don't want, I'm just curious, what could be so different than what you expected?
I thought it would be more about art and about rep and about performance, and it was much more about, and this, of course, I don't think any of them want it this way. I bet they would rather be talking about those things too, but it was, of course, much more about money and logistics and scheduling and how we want to word the application for the next announcement. And, it was much more administrative and secretarial. And that's just my ignorance. I imagine if any of these people are listening, they're just going to say, well, Casey, duh, what did you think? And they'd be right, So anyway, yeah, to Laurel and Megan's point, yeah, attend those meetings and you may just find out, like I did, oh, wait, actually, this isn't what I thought it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I'm serving on the university committee now. And part of that thing that we kind of split up into subcommittees to kind of get more varied things happening. So we're doing a sort of technology subcommittee as part of the university committee. And they also have liaisons to kind of get people out that are students into other committees. So I'm also on the music technology committee kind of as a person to give some feedback to. But because of that, I've collaborated with people on that and my committee to kind of do some little things for Rhythm Scene. And we're potentially working on some other video projects that might help, high school age or young college students have some tools for recording basic stuff like that. So we're trying to do kind of varied things, but I mean, the committees are definitely a great way to interact with more people. And kind of similar to your experience, I had gone to some of the things expecting music technology to talk about certain topics, or even the university committee to talk about some topics. And then, things are a little bit different, but I found that there's some freedom with some of the things that you can put out with some new ideas that can kind of move it into the way that you want to some extent. So they're definitely a great opportunity.
I think it's also important for all the committees to be consist of members that are doing different things as well. Like Laurel, you mentioned that it's good for the service category of your tenure profile. And I think a lot of people, do that for that reason, but also because they enjoy, whatever, people have different reasons for doing different things. But I think it's really important to get people who are outside the university as well, to have those committees be very diverse and make sure that they are representative of the category they're representing,
Yeah, the Health and Wellness Committee has an MD on it and 2 licensed physical therapists.
That's cool.
And then those of us who are players but just nerd out about that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I think great. That committee's pretty chill. But when it came to the Facebook page, the MD was like, "Well, do we want to vet the information put out there? I don't want to say things that are wrong." And we were like, "Dude, it's Facebook. If people think." This stuff getting put out there is legit MD level things. They got other issues.
Well, that reminds me of just last week talking about the sound baths and meditation. And, I said possibly some offensive things of these chakra pitches and stuff. And Megan's article said, well, there's no scientific backing for that. And yeah, people share that stuff like it's reality.
Right.
And I don't know. That's tricky.
Right.
Especially for health and wellness, because it matters,
Right.
Well, I know. And some of it you don't ask for. When we first, at least when I first came on to that health and wellness page, people would ask questions of I'm having this pain here. What do I do? And you're like, shoot, this is awesome that this is like real content, but we're not WebMD, and this isn't the kind of thing you give advice to.
You can just say,
having never seen or met someone.
Eat more kale and listen to Pieces in the Key of E. That's what you need.
That's how I wish medical problems would get fixed.
Oh, that's
yeah, seriously.
You mean you wish medicine was magic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Peter, what attracted you to the university committee?
There were some people at Florida State that were on it. They were rotating off, and so I knew there were some openings, and I talked to them briefly about it, but I was just trying to get more involved with PAS and just other things to, get some ideas out in hopefully a meaningful way. So then I, like Laurel had talked about, I went through the process once they were announced and submitted, resume and letter of intent and got on it. So it's kind of how it started.
Well, guys, I do have a little thing today, and it does have to do with sound, and it's a speech topic. So as you guys all know, of course, but not all of our listeners probably know, one of my duties is to edit our podcast. And usually that just has to do with fixing something Skype did or something the internet did or adjusting the audio levels. That's always the typical problem. Whoever's recording, whether it's myself, Ben, or Laurel, or Megan, whoever's on the recording end, they're always a lot quieter. So I have to run our file through a compressor and get everyone else down and get everyone equal as best I can. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I have to edit out a lot of uhs and ums. Do you guys ever think you might have trouble saying or too much?
Never.
I know for a fact that all of us do.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone.
Well, this is good because we're talking about job interviews too. And
I know that on this note, Eugene Corporon, who conducts the wind ensemble at UNT, had a great story about when they used to do recordings on tape, they would actually, they would splice tapes together and they would give you an envelope that had all your mistakes in it, all the little bits of tape.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's tragic.
So you should have a string of errors you could glue together. That's really cool.
So Casey could probably give us all a little envelope of our ums.
Well, I did it.
Seen mine,
well, I
right?
did it to Laurel once, and Brian Calhoun called me out like, "Dude, that's so cruel." It's like, oh crap! Then I thought about it because I edited Laurel together, just going like And now that I think about it, it's like, wow, I'm glad Laurel laughed because it could be seen as really mean, but she laughed. So. Yeah, so we had a guest that had a whole lot of ums, and sometimes I just want to edit them out. And I think you guys, if you remember many episodes ago, I reported on something called misophonia, which is also known as selective sound sensitivity syndrome. This is that thing at work in your mind and your ears when you say can't stand the sound of people chewing or sipping or that whole little thing. And some people have it to a life interfering disorderly way, as in it just makes them absolutely aggravated, or they even find the sounds alarming. So there's some miswiring that doctors are still trying to figure out. But after editing about 100+ episodes now, I think I've developed something of a misophonic-like sensitivity to ums and ahs. And when I'm editing, sometimes they just, bam, they hit me like something is jabbing me. So I have to edit them out. What's that?
I'm just laughing.
Oh, it's funny. It's terrible. Yeah. And of course, I think mine makes sense because it's a call to work. As soon as I hear it, and of course some I let fly by if they sound natural or whatever, but sometimes they happen too often. I think, oh, this person is gonna, write in and say, hey, I don't like how I sounded on the podcast. I sounded like I was babbling. Can you get rid of the episode or like edit out how I talked or whatever? So I'm like, oh crap, I got to get ahead of that. So I think it jabs me because it immediately means, oh, okay, Casey, stop what you're doing and go to the computer and make sure you edit it out. So yeah, of course that makes sense why I would have a reaction to it, because it's telling you, hey, you have to do some work. So anyway, I just sought to look into it a little bit this week because I thought like, yeah, why does it bother us so much to hear those? And why is it that this morning I was listening to, Morning Coffee and News, And the new guy, yeah, oh God, he's awful. The new guy, he said 17 times in 60 seconds in a response.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh.
So that seems like a lot, but there was one time in one of our podcasts, I edited out 136 ums from a person. It happened to be a guest, but it's okay, it all worked out fine. But yeah, it's so common. And anyway, so I wanted to figure a little bit of that out. So, how bothersome these ums are, at least to me, depends on the length, the volume, and the frequency. So that's frequency not as in pitch, but as in like how frequently they occur. So I took a little time this week to find out why people use these speech fillers and if there's anything we can do to help ourselves say them less. So several sources online, and they tended to draw from the same research, and that is research of linguists Herbert Clark and Mark Lieberman. So a few articles, one ABC News, another one I found on bustle.com, and another Business Insider, and of course, the excellent and always accurate Wikipedia. So let's see. Ums and ahs are considered common non-lexical vocables within speech disfluency.
Lexical vocables.
I know. Non-lexical vocables is really satisfying. So linguist Herbert Clark of Stanford University explains that people often use and in a very particular deliberate way. Phrases like and and play an important role in language by serving as a speaker's conversation manager. So that's a new term, conversation managers. So to summarize this, a filler like can cue the listener you're talking to just to say, hey, please don't respond yet, I'm still thinking. Could also cue a listener, I'm not finished yet, I'm just trying to gather and complete my thought. So this idea conflicts with the thinking of renowned linguist Noam Chomsky, who argued in the mid-1960s that such phrases like are simply errors in applying knowledge of language in actual performance. Chomsky didn't consider and ah part of proper language. So if you don't know who Noam Chomsky is, check out the very beginning of the Bernstein Harvard lecture series, because he uses Chomsky as a really, really cool way to explain antecedent and consequent and phrase and conversation in music. It's really, really cool how he uses Chomsky. So let's see. Gender seems to matter. In Lieberman's study involving transcripts of 14,000 phone calls, they found that women say about 22% more than men do, and discovered that men say twice as much as women. This has been my experience as well, listening to people on the podcast, and then also listening to people even this morning online, like Scaramucci guy. It wasn't it was So women use 20% more when talking to a man instead of another woman. Some studies show that we use to signal longer pauses and to signify shorter ones. Another article I read suggested that we say when we're thinking of what to say, while we say when thinking of how to say it. So
That's
what else?
interesting.
I thought that was interesting too. Women perhaps signal with speech fillers because, anyone want to guess why? Or excuse me, women perhaps signal with speech fillers more because, anybody want to guess why?
I don't know. Will you mansplain it to me?
Good. We need a sound effect, like a bell. We need like a bell or something.
The sexist bell.
Right, the sexist bell. We've had so many of those already. So the reason women use these fillers more is because they are interrupted significantly more when speaking by both men and other women. This is from businessinsider.com. Being slightly less eloquent doesn't necessarily mean you aren't as smart, though. Linguists have said those who use more of these so-called filler words are probably being more conscious of who they are talking to rather than what they are saying. Michael Hanford, a professor of applied linguistics and English language at Cardiff University, told the Independent people often use these words to be polite. For example, if you invite someone to a party and they say no without any of those filler markers, they may appear to be rude. Whereas if you say, sorry, no, I can't make it, it seems much more polite. So it's actually a much you're being considerate of the person you're talking to when you use some of these fillers. So don't feel bad if you or ah. We've been trained to do this since we were very young. As children, you learn to speak when spoken to out of respect or fear of not having an answer and punishment from your parents or adults. We are conditioned to answer immediately, which is why if you can't think of what you're going to say, you buy yourself time by going, So as far as what you can do, this is from www.extension.harvard.edu. This suggestion is simply to take a pause before answering. Pause, think, then answer. It may feel unnatural to pause, especially since you have responded to questions right away your entire life, but I assure you that you will deliver more powerful responses and reduce your chance of using filler words if you give yourself time to think. They also suggest you record yourself. I know I've had this experience with, of course, myself on the podcast, and I'm being annoyed with how much filler words I use, like I just did. And also working with students, because I like to have my students give little presentations at our percussion ensemble concerts while we're doing set changes and, do a little PowerPoint score show and tell type of thing. And I always have them run through it a couple times with the studio. And one in particular, I showed their tape back to them, and they're like, wow, I said so many times. Yeah. So anyway, that's the end of that. And that's how they say get better. Remember to pause, think, and go slow, and then also record yourself and ask people to tell you, ask your friends to point it out to you when you say them. And I guess it gets better real quick just with that.
Yeah, I know we talked about this, Megan and I did a very long time ago about, I distinctly remember my first percussion ensemble concert as a director, and we had rehearsed the pieces to no end. I knew exactly how all the pieces went, and then I went out on stage, and I don't have stage fright or anything, but I went out on stage before we played, and it was just, and so the first piece, it was just terrible. And I know for a fact I've definitely gotten better at it through, I guess, just through experience. But yeah, it's horrendous trying to talk at a concert. And I remember like recording myself doing interview questions and things. You're like, oh God, I sound like that. It's so bad.
Yeah, that darkness of just like, wait, there's no one responding back to you. It's different. Yeah. I had a couple more suggestions of one of the articles that I read about this was from Forbes, so I don't think that was on your list, Casey. And they suggested the article is called, 4 Ways to Stop Saying and Other Filler Words. And they were a little different than the ones you suggested. One is hear yourself using filler words. So that one is the same, recording it and then listening back. They say, remember, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And the number 2 is chunk your information. So making sure that you're not just kind of running on, but you kind of have like organized chunks. And they say when you chunk, you get into a rhythm, a burst of words break, burst of words break. Focus on that rhythm and your ums will go. Number 3 is make eye contact. So this is interesting. They say it becomes much more awkward to say when making full engaging eye contact with the person. I wonder if that's true. I could see that, and almost as a way of kind of focusing your attention on the speech or something.
I think that's what makes like the podcast or a phone interview or something so hard, is that you're not looking at a person.
Yes. I feel that sometimes too, like when I go over to my segment, I'll be like totally comfortable in the conversation. I'll go to my segment and then I'm not looking at you guys anymore. I'm looking at what's on the screen. And I've tried that before, like just having an iPad, and that helps a lot too. Because all of a sudden, like, otherwise your environment's just completely changed. I don't see you guys anymore. And then it's just like you're speaking to your computer screen. It's weird.
I think I actually have that same problem too, Megan. I've had people say, hey, we film you speaking about this piece you wrote?
Yeah.
And I have a horrible time doing it. And the times I've failed at it, I've solved it by saying, hey, can you just step in and ask me these questions? Yeah. I just don't know how to just talk to a camera. And it's so much harder than it should be for some reason. But, I think you're right. When you're not in person and you're just listening, say now that we're doing audio only on the podcast, you're just taking away another sense. So the ear sense is heightened, right? So you're going to notice any type of,
That's true.
Any type of thing. I suppose it's that simple.
That's a good point. Number
That
4.
kind of remind me of prepping monologues in theater classes. Because that's always the audition material, generally, unless you're reading sides or something, are monologues. And always the first step, they'd have you do it, and then they'd say, okay, do it again. You're going to look at this person in the house who's like part of your class and helping you, and you just look at their eyes and say it, and it's totally different, and it's a million times better. And then you do it again, and they just move. So you're again looking at empty space, but you're kind of manifesting that connection for yourself. Yeah. It was always very interesting to me how much it changed, just because you were looking at someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that perhaps that helps with filler words also.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely going to try that. I mean, I hope that I make eye contact with people anyway, but like actually focusing.
Wouldn't it be fun? Wouldn't it be fun to go to an interview and like do no eye contact, just be like weird as hell the whole time, and answer the questions like down? Like,
no, that would not be fun. That would be awful.
That'd be so fun.
Okay. Here's number 4. Here's number 4. The last one. Pre-plan your transitions. So they're saying a quote is another important consideration is, or let's transition to talking about, and using those instead of filling the silence with saying another phrase, or let's move on to, or whatever, if you are presenting something like a monologue or something like that. So that's helpful. I noticed that in my lecture recital. Actually, there are a lot of places where I was like moving the slide or something, or transitioning between instruments or whatever, and I would feel like I had to put something there rather than just being silent, and maybe one of these phrases would have helped that be less awkward in my mind. And also, like, there's no hurt in silence, especially in a presentation. I understand like the interrupting thing we were talking about before, that makes sense, but in a presentation you're not having a conversation, so a little bit of silence is not the end of the world.
Well, I think the silent thing, it's that whole thing of when you're on the spot, your perception of time is much different. Like students, when they're performing, you try to get them to take a pause or take a fermata for like a good length. They always do it shorter.
Yes.
You know, I found the thing to tell them is say, okay, as soon as you think it's long enough, wait 2 more seconds. And then it's right. Usually about right. Because it's that significantly shorter. You know, time feels so long when you're on the spot. So yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. You know, you want to just fill the silence because you feel like it's taking forever. So Peter, would you mind telling us just a little bit about the audition day and what it was like and what you had to do?
Yeah. So we had to be at the actual location on base, I think by 7 a.m. And we started right away, drew numbers, and the whole thing, I think, started roughly around 7:30, the first candidate. And I think from the whole process of pre-screening, there's about maybe 35 applicants, got down to, I think, 10 or 11 that were live. And there were a couple of people that were in the different Army bands around the area, DC and Maryland, that were in this pool as well. Did the first round, which was the whole packet. And then they do this kind of quick turnaround packet, which the week before the audition, they gave us 3 new excerpts to learn: vibraphone, xylophone, and then a marimba chorale. So that was round 2. And then the final round was playing drum set with the Army Blues Band. We played the 3 tunes, and then sight reading. So that was all kind of in that thing, and people got eliminated through that process. And I think within that final round, there were 4 of us going through each of the steps, playing drum set, sight reading. And then we all had to do an interview. And if I remember correctly, it was with around 10 people sitting around, different commanders and other people from the different groups. And they were just open to ask us any questions. And I think it lasted 10 to 15 minutes. It was a normal interview situation. So it wasn't unlike anything I've ever done before. And then like they still hadn't made a decision, I think by 4:00, and our flights were coming up pretty soon for everyone that had to leave. And they had actually told us that we had to leave. They'd call us and let us know how the results were. And actually at this point, I didn't technically win the job because it was between me and another candidate. We both were two people that they were really highly considering.
Was it
the other guy,
Cats?
it was no, Tim Perry is the guy, and he actually officially won the concert band job. And then they called me June 6th, I think, and said, "Hey, there's a guy retiring in the ceremonial band. They really liked you. Will you take this job?" And I said, "Of course, I will definitely take this job." So, wow. I mean, the two of us, we both did well. So he's actually in basic training now. I'm sure doing a ton of push-ups and living it up, and I'll be there soon. So,
are you excited about boot camp?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I get to get paid to work out, I guess, is a good thing. So
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. I'll be in really good shape at the very least.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Are you already running and stuff?
Oh, yeah. I'm doing a ton of push-ups and sit-ups and running.
I have a friend that just won the Navy Band clarinet audition about a year ago. And first of all, when I talked to Peter, I was surprised that he was able to get into boot camp so soon because I guess, I don't know if it's just the Navy or what, but they had a certain number of slots that they would take for musicians because I guess they didn't want to have a boot camp of entirely musicians.
Right.
So she finished her master's degree at Eastman and then had to wait like months. Like she won the auditions right at the end of her degree and then had to wait, I think, till January or something to go to boot camp. And so she had some sort of, I think, just like working at Banana Republic or something, some sort of retail job to tide her over. But like that sucks when you win this audition and then you're just biding your time. But then I know the one thing that she told me about boot camp, the one thing that I was like, I just couldn't do that was they had to get sprayed with tear gas. Mm-hmm. I was like, no, thank you.
I've heard about that. I'm not looking forward to that. But
I would at least wish that they would just do it at random. Like, I don't want to know what's coming. Just like, at lunch one day, there's the tear gas or something.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I bet you'll just react. You'll be full of watery eyes, and you'll just say, like, I bet you can't do a flamacue.
Exactly.
Now you're actually
right. Sorry, Megan. What was
No, that's okay. I was just going to ask, what was your reaction, when you won the position, you found out that you won? I mean, that, from what you've explained to us, it's quite the process from the tape to the massive amount of music and the MEPS and just everything. It was kind of a long process. What was your reaction once you found out you won?
Well, I mean, I was really excited. I had been told by the guy that called me up and told me originally that I was not, the other guy was selected, that, people, retire and things might pop up, but they have no certainty, can't guarantee anything. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I don't have this job. It's fine. I'll keep going, get ready for my third year. And so I was already ready, for another school year. I just got married in June, and then
congratulations.
Like a couple days before my wedding is when I got that call. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Because like Ben knows, family lives up in Virginia, so I could be close to family, and all these things just kind of happened to work out perfectly for us. So I was just like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah. Awesome.
So it was great. It was great.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I guess everyone sitting here has had the experience of getting your first full-time gig. And it's like, I worked at this for 10 years and it's finally it's arrived. And if you haven't already watched the Patty Nemi or listened to the Patty Nemi episode, anyone that's listening, check that one out. And in her book, she talks about when she won was it San Jose or San Francisco opera? San Francisco. She talks about the plane ride home back to New York. She said, I just cried the whole way because what else can you do? It's partially luck, partially hard work. And it just feels amazing when you finally get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you get asked to be on the podcast.
I cried.
And that's when I got really emotional.
That's right.
I cry about every week. Like, oh man, I gotta get something together.
No, but I remember sacrificing a wine tasting when we were chatting on the phone about the podcast. I was like, oh, we were like at a winery. I was with What Is Noise, and it was like, oh, you guys can go ahead and like go to this tasting. Like, I'm going to talk to Casey. That is not like me to give up wine for a phone call.
Wow. Like when I first called you to pitch the whole idea?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like,
those were long conversations.
Yeah. It was good.
Wow, good job. Okay, I gotta increase your pay a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe take Ben's pay down a little bit.
There you go.
Bonus this year.
Well, you guys, this was a fun one. Thanks so much. Peter Soroka, man, it's great to meet you.
Yeah, it was great to meet you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
congrats
sure.
on your new gig.
Yeah,
big congrats. That's fantastic. And if you're ever in the, back at Richmond and you feel like coming by, I'd love to see you there. Do you want to say any like last nice thing about JMU before you go?
All the schools in Virginia are great.
Awesome. All right. Hey, well, Laurel, Megan, Ben, thanks, guys. We'll catch you all next time.
Awesome. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.